session focuses on the topic power of data and how it helps in understanding problems and building meaningful solutions. To guide us through this topic, we are delighted to have Alok Agrawal, co-founder of AI for India. AI for India is an initiative that works to promote AI in learning, innovation, and community driven solutions across the country. He will also introduce us to the Datadaan platform, a platform that enables communities to contribute and use data to better understand real world problems and build impactful solutions. Over to you, Alok.
Thank you. Um, am I clearly audible?
Yes,
Okay. Can I share my screen?
yes.
Okay. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, it is visible.
Hi. Good afternoon. So welcome to this session. What I thought was I will do a small presentation, which should not take more than 20 minutes. This will focus on the importance of data when building AI solutions and our imperative for India in terms of how to use Indian data to develop AI models relevant for India, and what we are doing through this platform we created called Datadaan. Okay, um, let's begin. Um, the fuel for artificial intelligence. I'm sure some of you have already read about it, etc. The real fuel is data. We hear a lot about how AI will change the world, but it is simply an engine which processes a huge amount of data and churns out the kind of requirements that we may place on our various AI models. So no matter how powerful or advanced this engine is, the AI engine, unless it is fed with the right kind of data and right amount of data with the right context, it is not going to give us the results that we desire. So every piece of text, audio, video we generate teaches AI how the real world works. Um, Now, all the AI models, the big AI models that we are used to today, ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, Claude, Mistral, etc., have all been built outside India. They've been trained. So AI models first need to get trained on a lot of data, and then while they are working for us for our requirements or queries, again they go back to the data sets which are provided to them and give us the required output or answers. So most of the data which has been used to build these models by the Western companies largely originate from Western sources. Um, a very small percentage of that data pertains to India and comes from India. And when we start looking at our requirements, for example, in language and so on, then very little of that has been used. Which is why, beyond a point, you will find that these models struggle to understand Indian languages or reply in Indian languages. Well, at some level, they will start working, but the more you start using them, you realize how many mistakes they make. A language like Hindi, which is more popular, um, there is a little more data available, and therefore the models may perform better in Hindi. But as you start going on to the other languages, Tamil, Kannada, Bengali, etc., it starts breaking down. And for the smaller Indian languages, Assamese, and so on, it completely breaks down. Also, when you are looking at infusing the data, how that data has been used and what context has been provided from a cultural perspective. So India has its rich, diverse culture, and unless the data which is used has been given that context of our cultural nuances, the Western models will not do justice to what we are doing. Um, and then finally, the whole area of problem solving. At the end of the day, what are we using these AI models for? We are going to use them to solve our problems, day-to-day problems, right? The Western AI models which have been built, They solve for corporate world problems. Largely, that has been their focus. Whereas India is a very large, still a growing economy, and lots of people at a grassroots level need this service. Almost 60% of our people are still directly or indirectly working in the agriculture sector, for example. A very large percentage are self-employed in small businesses and so on, etc. So how does it understand challenges for those communities, the local communities, and solve for those? Um, um, Overall, if when we use these Western models, relying on outside data centers or outside data sets creates what is called an algorithmic bias, which means that the responses and answers we are getting are they have a Western bias or seen from their perspective because they have not factored in all the things I just spoke about. One simple example is when you try to create, for example, pictures of Indians. These are basically pictures of Indians with features which are not necessarily Indian, and they don't have a specific nuance to create a person different from each region to region. When we look at somebody, we know which region they might come from, which state they might come from, etc. But when you look at the AI models generating these pictures, they don't have um, that nuance built into them, and therefore they kind of create similar looking Indians every time we use them, which are really colored versions of whatever they do for the rest of the world. So we end up getting, because of this bias, and end up getting outputs which are unreliable, because it doesn't truly understand us as a society, as a country, and therefore we need data that represents our society. Um, the problem in India is there is poor availability of local Indian data. And therefore, that affects our stakeholders, academia. Uh, a lot of you are students and who are working, who are a part of some educational institution. The data from these educational institutions is not properly made available for model training. Private sector is, they keep their data very close to themselves. They don't let it out, and therefore understanding of Indian private sector, whether small or large, is very difficult for these AI models. And then government and citizens data, government has to be very careful in what kind of data we put out. Plus there is the added complexity of the fact that we don't want Indian government and Indian citizens data going out of our country to train foreign models, which could then be misused in some way or the other. Um, how do we truly understand data? In today's day and age, in the age of AI, actually anything and everything is data. So traditionally, we have understood data as quantitative data and text. Lots of fields of numbers and what those numbers stand for, or sometimes text. So the documents we produce, books written in various languages, etc., is one form of data which private individuals may have. Private organizations have similarly a lot of quantitative and text data, whether it is employee attendance, their local strategies, uh, sales transactions, what have you. And the government has, again, a lot of data when government interacts with people, whether it's tax collection or the benefits they offer to us, various transactions that the different government bodies have between themselves, weather-related data, and so on. Um, but there is also audio related data. So this conversation, which I'm having right now, can also be recorded and put into an AI model, and the AI model can learn from whatever is being said. So it will not only learn the content, which I'm talking about, but it will also learn the way I talk, my voice, etc., and which can be used to then train other voice models. Similarly, medical records, if they're just spoken medical records and so on, customer helpline conversations, of course, all the songs, audio, video of any kind, is something which gets into the audio data sets. And then finally, video and spatial data. So videos of all kinds, the kind of videos we see on our social media feeds, on YouTube, etc., on our television channels and cinema halls, so all the movie related, all that starts becoming data to train models so that AI models can in the future start generating content by themselves. And again, if you try to create clips, video clips, for example, using any of the AI tools, you'll find that they're not really correct about the Indian environment, and there are some foreign elements which always creep in, whether it's in terms of the look and feel, the colors, the accents that people are talking, etc., etc. So there is a lot of video and spatial data, which is also available, but it's not well put together and it's not made available for model developers. Um, so with keeping this in mind, we created this initiative called Datadaan. The whole objective is simple, that if you are, whether you're an individual or private organization or a public institution, if you have data and any of the data which I spoke about in the previous slide, then make it available for model developers to build their models for India. Right. Really, it becomes an exchange of data sets and information between data owners and data users, which are the model developers. Um, and every donated data point then starts building a better AI model for India. So it starts becoming a tile in a much larger mosaic. Overall, the effort, whether it's by a government or entire startup ecosystem or corporations and even some individuals, is about building, India's own independent digital brain, or this, as we call it, the sovereign AI model, right? Because AI is seen as the alternate brain or the alternate intelligence, and therefore it is important for us to have our own version of an Indian sovereign AI, right? This is something which we believe, everybody believes very strongly, will drive economic growth, because with more capabilities of AI, companies can do better, governments can do better, all of us can be benefits. It can help with cybersecurity, because today most of us use digital products in some way or the other, or information about us is easily available in some digital format, and therefore it needs to be kept safe and secure all the time. And therefore, good AI tools uh, will need to be used to make sure that the storage of all this information and data is secure, and people cannot be, so this data cannot be used to uh, harass people or cheat them. And finally, the most important thing, cultural preservation, because we want to continue to be the India with our cultural diversity, the rich heritage, and so on. And therefore, sovereign AI must start factoring all that in. Today, I'm sure all of us have used AI tools, and but they don't really, they are all very standardized, so they don't um, give us the cultural context or output. They don't feel very human or real in that sense. But as we go along, that sensitivity will have to be built in. And more importantly, we want to preserve our heritage and culture as we go along. We don't want to be whitewashed by our Western culture. So that's why the government has the strong effort on building sovereign AI, and it is doing many things, from providing compute infrastructure to supporting model developers, sovereign model developers, to application developers who will put out applications relevant for our day-to-day lives, as well as data storage and use. Um, we know that AI is already starting to solve some of our day-to-day problems. So just some examples: Indian Railways, for example, manages billions of journeys in a year. So the railways fed an AI model with data from 200 long-distance trains, including the premium Rajdhani trains, and they created the ideal train profile, which AI learned from the passenger booking habits, origin, destination demand, and so on. And it was able to optimize seat allocation. As a result, shrinking the waiting list by 5 to 6%, which is quite significant, because waiting list is frustrating for consumers, etc. And this is just the starting point, right? Over a period of time, it will keep getting better. It will start helping railways plan demand and supply much more if they understand that peak travel season is coming, demand is likely to be more, then right in advance they will be able to plan how many more trains they need to plan on a certain route, where to source them from, etc. Right, and these are things which will, as we keep using more of them, we will also generate more data with the new habits which are coming, which are fed back into these systems, and more optimized models are developed. Um, the second, very, very important use case for a company like ours is uh, languages, because we have this vast language diversity. Most AI models, like by ChatGPT or by Gemini, Anthropic, etc., were built entirely on English as their core uh, language, and therefore, even when it is processing information and giving output in a different language, uh, everything is first converted back to English. So I don't know whether you're familiar with this whole process of tokenization, which is used in these large language models to build AI solutions. But basically, the process of tokenization is that the language input is first converted into English, and therefore tokenized in English, then processed in English. The output is generated in English, it is translated back into the languages and puts out. So in all this, there are chances of mistakes happening in the translations, and therefore you could get a completely wrong output. Plus, you are doing that much more processing. So you're running more AI models at the back end, you're consuming more tokens, and therefore you're spending more money, because to process these tokens, there is energy requirement, which is very expensive. And therefore, to run these AI models, it costs a lot of money. So Indian government started on multiple initiatives more than 2 years ago to work on the languages stack as the first thing to correct. And differences in languages make life difficult. If you move from one region to the other, it's a completely different language. You have to learn that language. Uh, it's not very easy to learn a different language, and people then tend to lose out, especially as students. um, you want to be able to study anywhere in the country, you want to be able to mix with all the students in another part of the country, but if you don't understand the language of that place, then there are these barriers which come up and you're not able to relate to things very easily. A large number of students in India, for example, come from schooling backgrounds which are in their own language, they're taught in schools in their native language and not in English. But most of the higher education, especially the high end, is going to be, the education is in English. And therefore, they struggle when they come to an IIT or an AIMS or any of the premier institutions. They're not able to keep pace simply because they're not very good at understanding English, for example. So that's one of the things which is important for a diverse country like us to solve. The government started an initiative called Bhashini, um, which brings data from multiple stakeholders, language data, and they have even open source. So anybody, all of us, we could do recordings and send it for to train these models, the Bhashini models, which is available for free for anybody to use. And it is now putting out our ability for people to be able to translate any content from one language to the other in almost real time. So whether you're watching videos or listening to an audio, etc., it can be all done in the local language. The Indian Institute of Science recently made uh, over 16,000 hours of speech data from it. It's completely open source under the Bhashini model, which not just Bhashini, but anybody who wants to build a voice-related AI model can use. A company like Sarvam recently launched their big models. And the biggest thing they demonstrated was real time translation from any language. So if a speaker is speaking in English, real time, they can show translation in Hindi, in Tamil, in Bengali, 22 Indian languages. Similarly, another sovereign AI effort supported by the government, which is Bharat Gen, is working at building their AI models from scratch in the Indian languages. So the very tokenization which happens in the Indian language, in the text of that language. rather than happening in English. So this reduces the burden of the number of tokens we are using to run a command, reduces the errors which will happen because there is no back and forth translation, and therefore becomes far more efficient and accurate. Us. There is a third project called Anuvadani by the government, which is using AI to translate all the textbooks from their original language into multiple languages, most of them from English to Indian languages, but also a lot of Indian language original content into other languages, including English. Um, the other important aspect to keep in mind is while developing AI models, the sovereign AI models, the cost is very high, which is where I'm sure all of you keep reading that OpenAI has raised so many $1 billion and Anthropic has raised so many $1 billion and so on. Because these AI models have to source data, there is some cost. The biggest cost goes into um, processing all this data using the transformers model there for their LLMs. Uh, and that has to run on what is called GPUs, which a company like NVIDIA provides, which is very expensive. And therefore, the cost of building AI models, most of the cost goes into computation on these expensive GPUs. And there is a shortage of these GPUs because there are so many companies and countries building their AI models. So the GPUs are in high demand, and NVIDIA has almost a monopoly on this. Um, there is more and more data owners are demanding fees for their data sets, whether it is media houses or corporations or even individuals saying, if you're going to use my data, pay me for it. So that becomes the additional cost. And of course, there is always going to be cost of people who are working on these models, etc. So there is a very high cost involved. So at least one of these costs, the Indian government again has taken it upon themselves to offer GPUs at a much lower cost to people. So they are subsidizing heavily, and it is significantly cheaper than what you would get in the West or if you went to any of the private GPU providers. Um, but through the Datadaan initiative, what we are trying to enable is free access to data, but with the right safeguards and permissions, because we don't want anybody to come and misuse it. We want to ensure that the privacy is kept in mind, and therefore, uh, all the data is shared with content and shared for the purpose of building sovereign AI models for India for the benefit of Indians. Um, so that becomes a big advantage. Um, while sharing data, of course, people have this fear that whether my data will be used properly, can it leak out, can it be misused, and so on. The most critical data point, obviously, is personal information, our data, and we have so many records relating to each person. We don't want anybody looking at it and trying to get a peek into our financials, our bank accounts, etc., etc. Uh, so India has is one of the very few countries, you will be surprised to know, which has a data protection act, personal data protection act called DPDP. And all companies, big and small, are required to follow the guidelines under DPDP, or strict actions can be taken with very expensive fines and so on. So that becomes one way of protecting. Um, and therefore, all the data, your personal data, needs to be anonymized and presented in a fashion where people cannot go and identify you and say, this is the person, and therefore take any action against us. So there is privacy built in by design. It is anonymous, and therefore nobody can pinpoint. And there is the legal safeguard which is provided for use of this data, because every form of data eventually reflects a human's behavior, details about them, information about them, and so on. Um, so this TPTP Act empowers a protection architecture to retain total control over your digital footprint. At each stage, what we are envisaging in our Datadaan platform is that it is driven by consent. So you cannot go and just use the data which is there. If you go to our platform, datadaan.org, you will find that there are data sets. People, so what people come and commit is saying, I have this kind of data set, it has that many records, and this is how you can access it. So on our platform, we don't ask people to come and just dump their data sets, because people may have different considerations why they would give it. But you have to request. In some cases, people will provide links to their websites where it can be downloaded. But the others may say, write me a mail and then I will make it available. Give me the reasons why you need it. What are you going to do with it, etc. And the consent managers will extract, you know, assurances that all safety protocols have to be maintained, cybersecurity is maintained, and therefore there will be no misuse of data. Secondly, as a result of all this, there is an auditable trail because we know what data sets have been provided, who has taken it, and therefore at any point, if there is a misuse coming from that developer or user, it can be easily identified and action can be taken against them. And the ownership lies with the original data owner. So if, for example, some company is capturing our data and putting it together, they cannot release that data to a model developer or out in the public without taking our consent first. And therefore, they will find some way of taking our consent either on our app or through some other process. So the ownership remains with the original data owner at each stage. Uh, the circle of digital process is what is going to drive digital adoption in our country. And the reason why India is actually so positive about digital tools is because it helps us leapfrog. India as a country still has a long way to go. We are not as developed as the West or even some countries in Asia. And we don't necessarily have the kind of resources which developed countries have been able to put in building physical infrastructure and so on. So we try to overcome all that by using digital infrastructure to offer services and benefits to people, um, ensuring citizen safety and voluntary this thing. Um, uh, Datadaan pools it into a secure national repository. Indian startups access this data, and then AI solves these daily problems for us. So what we are attempting to do through this initiative, through data done process, is making sure that data is available for development of the right digital products, mainly sovereign AI products, for a better future for all Indians, which is built by Indians with complete understanding of India and our cultural heritage. So it's not just about a policy, but it is an action. It's like a movement, and we encourage everybody to join this movement and start using the data sets to build India's sovereign AI. So with that, I will stop, and we can have as many questions as you would like to have.
Thank you, Alok. Request Payal to come in as well. I think that was very useful. And while audience is getting ready to ask their questions, a couple of questions from my side, Alok. One was, I mean, very useful, both the Datadaan platform as such, and we were in fact thinking how we can leverage it for the participants of this hackathon. So are there any examples that you can maybe talk us through where Datadaan platform was leveraged for a specific problem statement and they took it forward and it helped to kind of accelerate their whole solution? Any examples?
Actually, we've not been able to keep track of once people take, then so far. So that's something we have to build. A lot of them are in the process of building. One example we know is that there was a company working on video models. So they already had trained their video models for safety and security in industrial premises, in factories, and so on. And then we spoke to them and said that can we jointly develop a model, vision model for public safety, right? So we have cameras all across. Can those cameras start becoming intelligent and start recognizing incidents before they happen, or if an incident happens, being able to flag off immediately? Because one problem is while there are, you know, thousands, hundreds of thousands of cameras all across India, there is very poor monitoring of them. As per some data we got, almost 50% of them are inactive at any given point in time for various reasons. That either they're pointing in the wrong direction, or there's a technical fault, or there's no power supply. There can be various such things. So starting from that basics, you can use a small AI model to understand whether these um, cameras are live, and then capturing the data and giving real-time feed, whether there's an accident, an incident, or something like that, or a big gathering of people. So we had a long list of what could be these incidents which it flags off. So that is a model which is now almost ready. It's not been deployed anywhere, but that used a lot of video data captured from various locations, and it's now also been made available to large model developers like Bharatchan.
Oh, that's very, very interesting. Um, Participants, you can start posting your questions on chat as we speak. So while that is coming in, uh, very interestingly, Alok, we were in fact exploring yesterday. I mean, just to give you statistics, 6151 participants have registered for this hackathon, and they come from almost 600
Fantastic.
plus, yeah, cities. So but one of the things we are also noticing is tier 2, tier 3 cities are candidates coming from, may not have acquaintance with English. And how do we, interactions we are enabling through this forum, how do we make them reach in their local language? And Bhashini look appears to be a perfect answer to it. uh,
Yeah, so you should explore that and see if that can be plugged into each of these calls,
right.
so that there could be real-time translations available. And even Sarvam has already launched their models, and it is open sourced. So if some of the participants here want to take that challenge up, go to Hugging Face, download the server model, and see if they can build a plugin for us um, very quickly. It'll be very helpful.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So participants, you have got one use case, potential use case already to work on. Yes, you can start posing your questions. Payal, over to you.
I would request the participants to please drop off some queries related to the session.
Yeah, so while they are gearing up, another question from my side, and our organizing team feel free to, I'm sure, I mean, the session was so uh, good to give a broader perspective, and it did raise, lot of opportunities in my mind, as well as, kind of potential leverage that we can take both from Datadaan, Bhashini, and Anuvad. So in that context, I mean, if somebody, our participants have to leverage Datadaan as a platform, what will be the process that they need to follow? Alok, if you can throw some light, and then maybe we will establish that as a formal process for them as they reach that stage, but maybe some high level uh, inputs.
Okay, so on our platform, we already have about 85 or 86 data sets which are posted. A lot of them are government data sets. Uh, and how to access each one of those is available. So there are cards for each one of these. And once you go there, you'll be able to figure out whether there is a link from which where it can be downloaded, or there may be an email ID which is available where they can request for this data. And uh, then the conversation is built. So our platform just works as a conduit to put the data user and the data owner together. And then we don't play any role. But before posting, we make sure that any data set which is put out has been vetted and verified by us, so that it is not going to be misused, and it comes from credible sources. Uh,
Okay.
in fact, one of the aspects which is emerging as a great opportunity for young developers and so on is, see, data is one thing. Data comes in its raw form, but that data needs to be enriched. we need to have proper labels around it. It needs to be given the context, and it is no longer as simple as attaching keywords to it, which was prevalent earlier. There is a lot more complexity which has gone into this entire enrichment, so that these AI models can process them correctly. And this is one of the things, in fact, our IT minister had also spoken about. For example, even if we make Indian data available to a researcher in the US, uh, they will not understand the context in which that data has been generated. So while they're not trying to be wrong, but it'll end up being wrong because the way they look at that particular clip of video or some audio, etc., will be different from the way we actually think about it in our country. And within our country, because of the diversity, different regions may look at things differently, right? Simple things like the way we nod our heads, means something different in the north and something different in the south. We have gotten used to it, but a machine does not know that. And so they will try to standardize each one of these, etc. So there is opportunity, large opportunity in enriching this data, orchestrating it properly, and putting it together in data set format, which is going to be relevant for different models. And so the there are lots of job opportunities which are going to come up just in this particular space.
Yeah. So what started really as part of data connotation in terms of labeling of data is going much more contextual with maybe rules around it or even the context around it, right? I think that's very
Right.
interesting.
Yes.
There are a few questions in the chat box. One of them is Siddhi is asking, are the Datadaan data sets publicly available for students like us to use?
So, like I said, go to the datadaan.org website, and each card, each data set, the owner has already indicated how it can be accessed. Either a link is provided from where it can be directly downloaded, or the owner requests for an email before it can be shared, and so on. So the process in which the data can be shared is made available, and anybody, a student can access it, a startup can access it, any company can request for it. So it's open to all, but finally the decision will be with the data owners.
There's another question from Vaishnavi. What advice would you give to students who want to start learning about data and analytics?
Um, so like I just said, there is a lot of enrichment that these data sets require. There's a lot of filtration of data sets which is required, taking out the bad data and only using the good data. And therefore, so in fact, this is an interesting thing. Yeah, um, a lot of big data owners, like companies, believe that, oh, their data has a lot of value. But the data sets that we have, because they don't have the right labeling, the right context around them, is by itself useless. It's not very meaningful. So unless that data is taken and something done about it and made it relevant for the machines to be able to get right information around it, it's not going to be useful. So that is a very good opportunity for people to look at. And then when we all put it together, how easily is it going to be extractable? How should it be orchestrated, etc. There are so many different. I'm not a data science expert, but I'm sure if they look at some of the courses around data science, a lot of this can be made. They will understand how exactly to look for opportunities in various data analytics field.
Again, there is a question from Vaishnavi. How will data change the way businesses work in the next 10 years?
Uh, So I have my personal theory, and we're seeing some small symbols of that which are coming out. That in the future, so we are today used to a world where we consume products, right? Whether they are digital products or physical products, which are predefined or predetermined, right? And we have to orient ourselves, learn how to use that product. Companies try to make them simpler and simpler to use, but we still have to. You open a new phone, you have to learn how to use it. You open Teams, you have to learn how to use it. Although it may be simple, but still some amount of learning requirement is there, etc. To my mind, the future is going to be such that uh, we will have vast amounts of data which has already been pre-trained, and the whole product layer, the software plus product layer, will go away, and you will request for a product the way you want to interact with it, and so on, which AIs will build in real time. Just yesterday, for example, there was a very interesting news article about Travis Kalanick, the founder of Uber, who has built this new company. He's been building it for 8 years, which he didn't tell anybody about. What he is doing is he's just putting together a lot of data and understanding of consumer behavior, and all the food ingredients. He's building robots to prepare food using robots and deliver them autonomously through autonomous delivery vehicles. And therefore, sitting at home, you can decide what you want to eat now. You don't need to go through a fixed menu card, but you just say, "This is what I want to eat," and the food will be delivered to you in whatever time, entirely untouched by humans. So it'll be prepared. This recipe will be created. It will be prepared by robots. It will be delivered by autonomous vehicles, and so on. Sounds very futuristic, but this means that there is no product, there is no platform like Zomato, there is no restaurant like McDonald's in between.
Akshay is asking, is there any YouTube channel for this?
YouTube, there is no YouTube channel we have for Datadaan. We have an AI4India YouTube channels where we keep putting out some videos from time to time. But on YouTube, if you search for knowledge around data science, data analytics, and so on, there is enough and more information which is there.
Participants, is there any questions more coming up?
I'm just building on what Alok you just said with the example, what will change in next 10 years. I think most impact we will see is in consumer product industry, right? Because that touches common human beings, right? And example of food could translate to apparel, it could translate to
Yes.
different products, right? So the product design could be done for in any, I mean, exactly same example could be electronic products, it could be furniture, the way you want it could be done in a very short lead time, right? And that could be the potential impact of AI.
Yeah, so everything can be and will start becoming more personalized at a very, very low cost to customize. And we're already seeing some signs of this. So if you look at automobiles, for example, the number of variants of, and I've seen automobile industry very closely for the last 30 years. There used to be very few models, and each model would have very few variants because they needed to be produced in factory and you have to keep inventory and so on. But now people are bringing out more and more variants, and you can pick and choose saying which color upholstery you want and what kind of features you need and you don't need, etc. Because the factories have, with all the digital technology which they have adopted over a period of time, become much more nimble in being able to produce small batches and still at high cost. Now with AI coming in, all that will become completely compressed. So everybody could have a customized car for themselves. It's true. In clothing, already there are some smart people saying, once I get an order from Amazon or Myntra or wherever, then I will get them stitched and sent to you. So they take a 10 days lead time, but you get a customized product. More and more of that will start happening.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Any other questions that we are seeing? Payal, Chitra, you have joined as well. So just for participants' benefit, we are recording these sessions and though will go on our YouTube channel, so you can always access back. More importantly, as we listen to these conversations, I mean, that will trigger different thoughts in your mind, different possibilities. Do write back to us in terms of if there are any details you need on any of these areas, because that's important. Our future learning sessions are going to evolve based on the feedback that comes from you, right? What you need more, what you need to understand more in detail, and so on, right? So that will be real power of having these sessions and you listening to them again. So please spread the word among your friend groups to access the YouTube channel, to listen to these conversations and see how you can leverage them the best. Yeah, if there are no more questions, then I think thank you so much, Alok. This was very,
Thanks.
very
Thanks for
useful, and
having
we
me.
will come back in both the aspects. In fact, Data Dan and Bhashini both are very, very interesting, immediate opportunities that we see. And thank you for your support. Payal, over to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alok, for that insightful session on the power of data. We appreciate you sharing your insights on Datadaan platform and the work of AI for India. Thank you for your time and guidance. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you for having me. Best of luck, everyone. Bye.
As we have a bit of time, so I would like to